Welcome to Her Script, inspiring you to empower yourself, champion others, and discover your role models in the dynamic world of life sciences. I am your host, Kara Pepler. In each episode, we sit down with remarkable women leaders at the forefront of healthcare innovation, from research and development to medical affairs, business development, and beyond. Discover bottom-line solutions to break through glass ceilings, overcome gender bias, and score your own path to success. Whether you're a seasoned professional in the biopharmaceutical industry or someone just starting their career, tune into Her Script and be inspired to lead in one of the most vital sectors of our society. Dr. Sharon Rosenzweig Lipson, with a BA in the biological basis of behavior from the University of Pennsylvania and a PhD in behavioral neuroscience from Harvard University, stands as a beacon of inspiration for aspiring women in science. Her distinguished career in drug development and leadership within major pharmaceutical companies not only showcases her scientific acumen, but also underscores the significance of effective leadership. With over 3 decades of experience in developing compounds for psychiatric and neurologic indications, Dr. Rosenzweig Lipson has honed her expertise in screening strategies, in vivo models, translation, and clinical development strategy. Her tenure spans major entities such as American Cyanamid, American Home Products, Wyeth and Pfizer. Notably, she served as the head of R&D at AgeneBio, spearheading the clinical development of the company's lead asset through phase 2b trials and overseeing preclinical development programs. Currently serving as a chief scientific officer at Life Biosciences, Dr. Rosenzweig Lipson leads the company's scientific research and development strategy and clinical development endeavors aimed at advancing therapies targeting the biology of aging. Welcome here to Her Script, Dr. Rosenzweig Lipson. I am so happy to have you here as a guest. We're really fortunate to get your attention to be here today. Let's talk first about the factors that have shaped your leadership journey and contributed to your current identity and pursuits. Can you share a specific experience or memory from your childhood that had a significant impact on the person that you've become today?
So thank you, Kara, for having me and hosting me today. So there are 2 memories from childhood or early adulthood that really have had a significant impact on the person I am today. I like to boast to all my friends and family that my best academic achievement comes in first grade. In first grade, I was envious of the kids who already knew how to read, and I didn't know how to read. And so obviously I was not in one of the high reading groups because I didn't know how to read yet. And so I was in this low reading group, and I took the reading book home with me, even though I wasn't supposed to. Came back the next day, I could read much better than expected and rapidly rose to the point where I was in the highest level reading group. And it was a very proud academic achievement that stands with me to today. So, people think that, I have a degree from PhD from Harvard, that would be the big academic achievement, but actually it's first grade.
Oh, that's incredible. It really shows, it's really a testament to your character early on when you just wanted to suck up that knowledge. You wanted to learn and excel at something. You didn't want to be behind. You really wanted to get ahead.
Apparently I was quite competitive even as a 6-year-old. Who knew? The second one that I want to talk about, though, because it's really the one that sort of establishes a life motto for me, which comes in college. So I started at Brandeis, and then after 2 years, I transferred to the University of Pennsylvania. Both Brandeis and Penn had you have to get through level 4 of a language. So I took through level 4 at Brandeis in my freshman year, but I didn't transfer till my junior year where I had to take a placement test. Well, I have 0 aptitude for language, and I placed right back into Spanish 3. And so I had to now convince them that this was not the best use of my time to retake Spanish 3 and Spanish 4. So I went to a series of people, and they said, speak to this person, speak to that person, go to college advising. College advising, they told me I needed to have a language disability. I was like, okay, so how do I get one of those? They didn't find that amusing. Spoke to lots of different people who kept saying, no, no, no. Finally, I was able to convince the chair of the foreign language department that it was not in my best interest to retake these 2 classes. And so they finally agreed to let me out of the language requirement. And so this built this life motto for me, which was, and people know it, who know me know this is my life motto: if the answer is no, you must have misunderstood the question. And so I just keep going until I get to yes.
That's a really great quality and characteristic you can have for influence. That's a really great story. I can't believe that happened, that you could really just go through and say, no, I'm not going to take that answer. I'm going to convince you. We've spoken previously. It was there that you've mentioned to me that early on in your career, you learned from mentors that the careers of most leaders take unexpected paths, which has really been true for you too. Tell us about an unforeseen circumstance in your career and why that was significant.
At Wyeth, we had recently reorganized the neuroscience group, and I became head of their translational neuroscience group. And within just a few weeks after that time, Pfizer announced that they were going to acquire Wyeth. And so with that acquisition of Wyeth, they were moving our group from Princeton, New Jersey, up to Groton, Connecticut. I made a personal and geographic decision not to stay with Pfizer. And so I actually became the Princeton site head for the site that I had worked in for over 15 years. And that site was one of the sites to close. So I wound up having to move people and programs up to Groton. I wound up redesigning the vivarium up in Groton. And this was a fantastic leadership experience and obviously a very difficult emotional experience. So at the end of this experience, I had no intention of consulting. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how you do it. I didn't understand networking. Just was outside of my comfort zone. So I took some time off, and then I went to the ACNP meeting, the American College of Neuropsychopharmacology meeting, and started talking to friends and colleagues about my Pfizer paid vacation. Who knew that was networking? Okay? I mean, part of this opportunity was a number of different consulting opportunities that arose, including one at a company called AgeneBio, where I then spent more than a dozen years consulting for AgeneBio. So I had no intention of consulting. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to approach it. But just having this normal conversations with friends and colleagues created these consulting opportunities and these great new opportunities at a small biotech to really become a part of all aspects of a program. You know, in big pharma, you get to be part of a component of things, and really you get to follow things all the way through. Mm-hmm. But it's, you know, at small biotech, I started to do formulation design, clinical trial design, and implementing all of these things. And it really gave me a much broader expertise than I even started with. So it was a great experience for me.
I love that you called it your Pfizer paid vacation. But really, you know, my takeaway message here is that you leaned into networking. You didn't even know what networking, I'm sure you had a fundamental understanding of what networking was, but you just didn't practice it until this opportunity arose where you also discovered a new feather in your cap that you could, develop for yourself under this consulting opportunity that you said lasted, more than 12 years. So that sounds like a really pivotal moment.
It was a great experience and a great opportunity.
So, Dr. Rosenzweig Lipson, you've earned several awards in business, including a Pfizer Site Transition Team Leader Award, several Wyeth Development Track Achievement Awards, and a Team of the Year Award for your team leadership role. Was there ever a moment where you felt like you finally made it to leadership?
So I think there are two. I think the first of which is when they were developing team leader training, they asked me to teach components of the team leader training course. And so certainly, not only do you feel like a leader when you've led a team, but you certainly feel like a leader when you're asked to teach other people how to lead a team. And so that was one of the first opportunities and times where I really felt like I had made it into leadership and I was recognized as a leader. The second time is actually a little different. So I worked in the Wyeth neuroscience division, but I wasn't a leader of any of our divisions. So we had a depression anxiety group, we had a neurodegeneration group, we had a schizophrenia group, but I wasn't leading any of those. But we did have a team building leadership strategic kind of workshop for all the team leaders with our neuroscience executive committee and an outside facilitator. At the end of that day, there were surprise ratings. Okay, everybody in the room got rated. Whew. Okay, some people were quite angry because we weren't warned ahead of time that you're going to be rated. But for me, it worked out quite well because anytime you present yourself in a forum, you should be presenting your best self. So I was fortunately highly rated and given an opportunity to join our neuroscience exec team, even though I wasn't actually a leader of any of the divisions. So it really gave me this opportunity to show that you can lead and create leadership opportunities, even when it seems like your path is blocked. And so it really taught me that, there are, even when, people look at a career path and they go, well, there's all these people ahead of me. I think, but if you can show your leadership in a variety of ways, you can create opportunities. And in this case, by just creating a good impression, just by, acting and engaging in the strategic planning and thinking about neuroscience and the team, I got this opportunity. And from being part of the neuroscience exec, then I got to be participant and lead Wyeth breakthrough projects for the company as a whole. So I got to take that next step of leadership. So I think it was that moment that I was recognized as a leader within neuroscience and then beyond the neuroscience group.
That's incredible. You never know when you're being, looked at for an opportunity or I guess judged maybe in a way. So thinking about not only putting your best foot forward, at a certain moment, but I'm sure that there was cumulative, they didn't see you there for the first time, right? They saw you there as a culmination of your experience leading up to that moment. That's really, really cool that you got sort of an interview without even knowing that you were being interviewed.
And I think it's really important that everybody remember that you're making impressions all the time. Okay, every day, every interaction is an impression. And I think just because you don't know how you did doesn't mean you didn't make an impression that day, positive or negative. So it's really important to keep an eye on that and pay attention to that all the time.
Self-awareness, absolutely. It's really fascinating to see how your early career influences have shaped your impressive trajectory. I'd like to now ask you some questions about key qualities or strategies that you believe are effective for leadership. To start us out, I have a very generic or general question for you. You've had a really successful career in drug development and leadership at small and major pharmaceutical companies. Do you have any advice or pieces of wisdom that have stayed with you throughout your life and guided your actions and choices?
Well, my best pieces of advice that I give to people is you have to go do the job at the next level. Okay? You shouldn't wait to be promoted into it. You don't want to wait for somebody to recognize that you can do the next job. If you start doing that job, then it becomes really easy to recognize that you're capable of doing it. One example for me actually comes when I was a postdoc. And so when I was a postdoc, the person who was in the research scientist position ahead of me left. Okay? So now there was this open position and work that needed to be done. So I just started doing it. Okay? When they started interviewing people for this position, multiple times it came back that said, well, what are they bringing to the table that Sharon's not already bringing? Okay. And suddenly, because I had already been doing the job, I got the job. And so I think that those opportunities to just jump in when something needs to be done and where you have an opportunity to showcase yourself gives you those moments to create opportunity. Go do the job ahead of yourself. Don't wait to be promoted into it.
See the opportunity to do the job at the next level and just go for it. It's, just say, I recognize that I can contribute and provide value in this situation. No one else is doing it. And that you just automatically put yourself in that position for others to see you differently.
The other piece of advice I say is always challenge yourself. For me, at least, it's boring to keep doing the same job. And so I keep looking for the opportunities that help you expand beyond your comfort zone and really stretch. And the more times you take those opportunities, the more time you feel confident that when the next opportunity arises, you'll be ready for it.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. Expand beyond your comfort zone. I think even in that, personally, you develop that added sense of confidence. Like, I can do this, right? And
Yep.
you have a track record of that. I can do this. And you give yourself confidence to be able to continue expanding beyond your comfort zone.
Exactly.
Although the representation of women in healthcare at the C-suite level outpace other industries, 32% to 22%, why do you think we're still not there with gender parity? Is it because of devotion, retention, hiring, development, something else? What are your thoughts?
So I think there's a couple of things. First of all, I think women are still trying to have it all, and it's hard to have it all. And I think women are still playing a larger role in managing their children's lives, whether it's shopping, doing homework, driving to activities, et cetera, than men. Even in households where men are very engaged, I still think that women still take a larger role in that. So some of it, is a little bit societal. Some of it is about choices women make, about which of these things are important to them. I was incredibly lucky that I had supportive mentors who prevented me from having to make tough choices and allowed me to continue to work at a high level, who really were there for me and who said, do what you need to do because we need to have you here also. And because I had these incredible mentors, I was able to navigate that have it all concept in a way that worked well for me. But the other thing I want to say is, in my experience, we were talking about opportunities before. I think when men and women with equal talent, equal skill sets, equal abilities are offered the same opportunity, that's a stretch. Often I hear the man goes, oh, I can do that. And I hear women say, well, I've never done it. I'm sure I could do it. Yeah, that would be great. I'd love that. Okay. And they hedge. And I think if women would just take some of that self-confidence and go, yeah, I can do it, I think then more opportunities would come their way. So I think sometimes, at least in my experience, I see too often we all do, we have that moment where we go, well, it's new, I haven't tried it. And I think, sometimes men just go for it. So I think we need women to just go for it a little bit more too.
So not only societal choices, but personal choices, or the way we view ourselves, and that manifestation in, the space that we create for ourselves could be holding us back.
A little bit. I'm not dismissing some of this role of societal influences here, but I think there are things that we could do to help improve our situation as well.
Let's now zoom out in one of the most crucial topics of leadership, which is integrity. Integrity serves as the cornerstone of ethical leadership and really guides our decision-making in times of challenges and uncertainty. With your extensive leadership experience, I'm really eager to hear your thoughts. How do you personally define integrity, and how does it track in both your personal and professional contexts?
So one of the things that people will notice about me, in any parts of my career, is that I am completely honest and very transparent. Okay? And I think those things are critical to integrity because I don't hide issues. Okay? If an issue comes up, I bring it forward, I address it, I come up with, we look for solutions and alternatives and things like that. But it's really important that issues don't get swept under the rug. And I think, that's a major part of integrity for me. The second is about evidence-based decision-making. Okay. It's really important for me to use information and evidence. I am such a scientist on this, and, to make decisions based on data and not just on what we'd like to see, what we hope, how can we, I'm very much about timelines and moving things quickly, but it has to have the right set of data to drive things forward. The other important things with respect to integrity are just not being afraid to speak up, okay? And really encouraging open communication. So people in my group know it's okay to disagree with me, let's discuss the evidence. What's the data? What's the reasons? How do we get there? And then importantly, I use a moral compass to guide me both personally and professionally about just, my own ethics and what I think is right and wrong. And so I pull all of those pieces together in terms of how I see integrity in leaders.
Yeah. One piece that stood out to me, although you've had a couple of good pieces of advice here, don't be afraid to speak up. Most people know what integrity looks like, but sometimes we just keep it to ourselves, or we don't speak up, or we don't address it. And then it's, if you don't say something, you're still making a decision.
Yep.
And then things can get carried away from there. So I think that's just a really important piece that I know is my takeaway, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you're not sure if this is something that needs to be discussed, having a discussion about it, speaking up about it.
Absolutely.
Beginning the conversation is really important. You just also mentioned your moral compass. I just want to ask, can you define that moral compass? Do you have any parameters around what that looks like for you?
So I started with, I'm just a pretty honest person, so it has to be truth. It has to be ethical, and I have to be able to live with myself. I have to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that whatever choice I made is one that I believe, represents who I am in those situations. Not everything's in your control. So sometimes the only thing you can do is bring it up, right? And then you don't have the authority to make those decisions. But at least if you spoke up, you've put in somebody else's hands the process of thinking through the issue and not just leaving it swept under the rug.
Yeah, I like that. You have to be able to go to sleep at night. And sometimes you got to make sure that you got to say it out loud, and it's got to be out there on the table and transparent. So we talked a lot about truth, honesty, transparency. When we talk about characteristics of a leader with strong integrity, what do you look for when you hire somebody on your team?
So I'm obviously looking for someone who isn't afraid to express a strong point of view or position, someone who's shown a demonstrated commitment to open and transparent communication, and somebody with a strong history of evidence-based decision-making. Those three things are important characteristics that I'm looking for in someone.
Do you have any advice for someone who might currently be handling a situation where there's a conflict between maintaining their integrity and achieving business goals?
So I think the first important thing is to be rational and persuasive, okay? Being the loudest person, getting angry, rarely successfully influences outcomes, okay? So as soon as you start to get angry and frustrated, I think you lose your ability to have a conversation and to move the trajectory of what you're trying to achieve. I don't think you should compromise your integrity, but we should always be looking for alternative approaches that find a way to create a win-win situation. So, I think those are important moments where you're bringing forward a problem in those moments. Okay. So you want to be able to bring forward potential solutions, potential workarounds, potential ways that you can maintain integrity and still move a product forward or move the program forward. The other thing is not to back people into a corner. As soon as you back them into a corner, they get really committed to their position. And so I think, I often find that in these delicate moments, I think you say your piece, and then sometimes it's best to lay off, take a step back, let it percolate a little bit, and give the other person room to process. And often I think you'll find that they come back with a better approach. Sometimes even the one you suggested, that they now have decided was their idea. But at the end of the day, you still have been able to move the needle. So I think that's important.
Knowing when to read the room and knowing when to say, all right, we've had enough of this conversation. I'm just going to let this simmer for a little while. We'll come back to it. Not having, being committed to moving the needle, like you said, but maybe it's not this moment. Maybe the moment is next week, or maybe the moment is in 3 days from now. But recognizing when to lay off the gas.
Yeah, I think if you find yourself repeating your argument over and over again, you've lost your ability to win the argument.
So true. So true. Something that I personally work on.
I have to say, this is a life of experience that gets me to this point in recognition of, where I was more or less successful, not just on these kind of, integrity issues, but on anything. It's recognizing how best to advance your opinions forward in a way that will be most successful.
Integrity is one of my favorite topics because it has such a profound impact on personal and professional conduct. It's a topic that's so crucial for building trust and accountability, ethical conduct, really at all levels of leadership. So let's switch gears now and talk about team building as another pillar of leadership. Team building is really often considered an art form. It blends personalities, skills, visions into this unified force. Can you take me through your approach to building high-functional teams?
Right. Well, so obviously the first step is to making sure that you have the right expertise on your team. For everything that you're going to need to do, you need the right people in the room. So in big pharma, it was pulling from all of the different parts of the organization or the department to fill those needs. In biotech, it's about making sure you have the right people in your organization, but then building out with consultants and building out consultants that have the right expertise. One of the philosophies I have is that I include all of my consultants in our team meetings. So I make them part of the team. So it creates, even in a small environment, a larger team. And because I think, in teams, what you find is somebody else's approach to a problem helps you to understand, oh, I didn't think about that, or we're going to need this sooner, or we hadn't considered that. And so having that is really important, is having all the right people in the room. I told you I taught team leader training. So one of the things I would teach in team leader training is that team leaders need to speak everybody's language. Okay. You don't need to be a molecular biologist per se, but you need to know what they mean when they say they're going to make a cell line and how long it's going to take and what it's going to take to do that. So you need to understand the goals and the needs and their timelines to deliver. Communication is obviously critical. Everybody needs to feel that they have a voice in the conversation. So as we're discussing things, I try to make sure that everybody can weigh in at whatever level they're at. I have an intern that I often, in our team meetings point to and say, okay, what are you thinking? Because I think everybody has, input into the conversation. I've seen a lot of organizations that are siloed. I don't like silos. I avoid silos at all costs and make sure that everybody understands that they can participate, engage, even on topics that are not their direct expertise. Because as people ask questions, as they come to understand it, everybody starts to understand it better, and everybody understands why they're doing it that way and why that makes sense or what needs to happen. Or maybe you go, oh, wait, maybe we should rethink this a little bit. So I think you need to have a process that goes from discussion to decision. So if you're going to allow everybody a voice in a conversation and discussion, at some point, you also have to get to decisions. So you need a process to do that. You need to confirm the alignment of the team. So, okay, so we've come to a decision. Does everybody agree? Is everybody comfortable with that decision? And really, one of the most important things is to build a sense that we're in this together, and that the more we work together, the better the outcome. So all of those things are things that really go into how I see teams and how I see building teams.
Yeah, that's really good. I think a piece of that, so really what you're saying is incorporating everybody's voice, making sure everybody's heard, but yet still not just circling in that, getting to a point where you are making a decision and moving, like you said before, moving the needle forward. So everyone feels that they're contributing and has a role to play. I think also being a leader, part of my takeaway from this is being humble enough to let others have a voice. Sometimes it's easy to feel like you can see the path forward and keep moving forward. And sometimes it's easier just to kind of keep going without making sure that you have everything cleaned up and everybody has their piece included in that decision. Once trust has been compromised, though, among team members, how do you facilitate rebuilding it? Is it a no turning back situation, or do you have any notable experiences or tips for rebuilding?
So I think rebuilding trust obviously takes patience and practice. This is not one that comes easy to any of us. Once trust is broken, it's a very difficult, tenuous set of conversations that need to happen. Rarely is one person responsible for the lack of trust. Okay, even if it seems like it's one way, it's often two way. There's something else that's going on, and so I think it's really important to have open conversations about what the concerns are from both parties, and finding small wins to build on. Okay, you don't have to fix it all at once. You find small wins and you start to build it. If this lack of trust is between, let's say, a team member and a team leader, it requires the team leader also to be open to feedback. So I can give you an example. As I was rebuilding some teams at Life, I was asked to see a lot of information that happened before I came. Okay, well, sometimes that was perceived as a lack of trust. I didn't trust what they did or how it was done. And so, I had one person in particular that was taking a little of the brunt of trying to find out everything that had happened previously. Once I was able to have a conversation where we were able to talk about trust. Okay, I don't see you trusting me when, and those kinds of conversations back and forth really allowed us to bridge those gaps and to find a way to a much improved relationship, actually quite a good relationship now, that I feel very good about. And I think the person involved feels very good about as well. But it was really about listening to each other and really understanding what those components that each of us was bringing to the table that was creating a little bit of this mistrust, and how then we can build and bridge from it.
Oh, great example. Even just calling out that there's a situation where maybe there isn't as much trust as you would one like to have, that's really, it sounds like your starting point, and then you were able to build off of that, like you said, with some small wins.
I think, in that moment, I was giving some feedback to somebody, and at the end of it, I said, okay, what feedback do you have for me? Mm. And it was at that moment that we could really have this honest conversation.
Excellent. That's great. While moderate competition within teams can be beneficial, some team members can be too competitive or withhold information or help from someone else. Have you ever witnessed this? And do you have any advice for leaders on how to handle this?
So sure, I've witnessed it. You can't go through a few years in the industry, without having witnessed it, or any proof could be academia too. It happens everywhere. So I think the ways I do it is I have people presenting at all of my team meetings. So especially if I start to see any of that, I make sure everybody's presenting. So you can't hide your information. You can't, keep it behind. I think leaders can ask a lot of questions to elicit the withheld information, and then really tie everybody's success together. The team wins or the team struggles. And then importantly, don't reward folks for siloed actions. When you have those moments where somebody seems to have gotten ahead by not having shared information, that's not the time to reward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. We're all going to win together. We're not holding back, and we're not having, there be one person that's going to be coming out on top because of withholding information.
But
another vital aspect of personal and professional growth is mentorship. And I know this means a lot to you. You earned an Outstanding Mentor Award from the New Jersey Association for Biomedical Research Advocacy Organization. How would you describe your mentoring style?
So my mentoring style certainly evolved over my career. I can't say that I was so great at it early on, and certainly something I developed over time. And some important things that came out for me is which is care about the whole person. Mm. Not just work, but care about what's going on at home. Early in my career, I was very much about okay, I got to get in, I got my job done, and then I got to go, and recognizing that talking to people, engaging with people, personal and professional, is really important for mentoring. So that was an important part of how I mentor now. I both teach and listen. I try to be supportive. One of the things I tell everybody is people make mistakes. Everybody does. So I basically just try to tell people not to make the same one over and over again. Vary them up. I think we all get frustrated when the same mistake happens, but as long as you vary them up, then they're new learning experiences.
Yeah.
And then I also try to provide opportunities for people that are a little bit of stretch goals that help them to take that and start to move in their next direction. So when I mentor, that's, part of what I'm trying to achieve.
Awesome. When you say care about the whole person, do you see that just in the mentoring environment, or do you see that in other contexts?
Last year, my dad had throat cancer. My mom broke her hip and had 4 hip surgeries. Okay. I needed people to take into account what was happening at home in the context of everything I was doing at work. And so I think it's just important to recognize there are moments in time where life has effects on what you're doing, and it's really important to understand those and to help support people through them so that they can get to the other side and continue to be successful.
Great advice. Can you describe any specific instances where your coaching or mentoring played a significant impact on someone else's development?
So I'm going to give a little bit of a shout out here ahead of time to Stacy Rizzo. So Stacy Rizzo worked for me in my lab. She started as a lab tech, but she functioned as a scientist well beyond her education. And so I gave her room and opportunity to grow and take on new responsibilities that were really commensurate with her capabilities. So she was developing, not just running behavioral assays in my lab, she was developing new behavioral assays. She was training lab skills for the entire department because she was that good. So she got leadership opportunities by training everybody else in the department. She started to write papers in the group. And this is somebody without a PhD. Wyeth then created a program that allowed high-performing lab techs, just like Stacy, to earn a PhD while continuing to work at Wyeth. So we were able to provide this opportunity to Stacy while she was working in my lab. And I'm proud to say Stacy is a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. She's doing incredible research in the AD arena. She co-heads preclinical testing for NIA's Model AD Consortium, and she's just a rock star and has made a fabulous career for herself. But it was giving her these early opportunities before the PhD was even on the table to grow that allowed her to be the right person for the PhD program when the time came.
Feeds right back in to what we were talking about earlier and some of your advice about finding that opportunity to just step into a role and do the job and then be seen in that role after you started doing that job. Yeah, great. What a fulfilling moment that must have been to see her grow and flourish after. Yeah.
So proud.
How do you navigate the delicate balance between providing guidance and allowing mentees the freedom to explore and learn from their own mistakes?
So I used some guidance I got from my postdoc mentor, who is Jim Barrett. And when I was talking to him about a postdoc project, and he's like, okay, what do you want to do? And I was like, okay, well, what do you think I should go? What do you think I should be doing? And he kept saying, just tell me what you want to do. And I said, okay, what happens if it's a bad idea and I come crashing to the floor? And his response was really straightforward. He said, I'll move the floor. Okay? And so he gave me the chance to bet on myself and take scientific risks and recognize that I would be supported in doing so. And so I really try to take that same approach of allowing people the chance to take some scientific risks and to learn from their mistakes if they happen and to grow from them, because the only way you develop confidence in yourself is by going out and doing it. And so I try to use that advice and build it into allowing people on my team to make mistakes as well.
That mentor sounds like he was incredible at just giving you the confidence. He's like, I'll back you up. You do what you need to do. You try it out, you figure it out, and I will move that floor for you.
It was fabulous advice. And I tell people that's another one I give out now.
I'm going to need to steal that one too. So anyways, taking care of business at work is really a major part of your schedule. However, I know you have a family as well. So tell me about a time when you needed to negotiate a decision for your personal or family wellness.
So this was an interesting time. I had 3 small children. I was building a house and I was overwhelmed. I was also about to put a compound into development. So I decided that I was going to put the compound into development and then I was going to quit. It was, time to take a break and navigate my life, my family, build a house, figure it out. As this was happening, there was a new head of neuroscience, Many Pangalos, or now Sir Many Pangalos. And his first day at Wyeth, I was giving the presentation that was going to advance the compound into development. So I was doing my job interview, even though I wasn't really interviewing for my job. Shortly after I met with him and told him I was leaving, and he's like, well, but if you were staying, I would have offered you this group leader role with multiple PhDs reporting to you. And I was like, great, that sounds terrific. Sounds like a great role. But, here's what's going on. I can't do that. The best I could do was part-time. And he said, oh, we're not, there's no more part-time. And I was like, okay, well, thanks. He's like, okay, 50% for 3 months, but then you have to come back to the same full-time, but I can't offer you that role. And I was like, thank you. I wasn't negotiating. I was leaving. Okay. And I was like, well, I don't know if I could report to somebody now doing my job, the job that could have been mine. Yeah. So, okay, so come back, and I'll give you that role. And, and it just kept going, and to the point where I started working 50% time. And then after 3 months, I came back to 80% time with this group leader role. And honestly, it allowed me to finish the work on my house, which I needed. It allowed me to keep my career going. And I have to say, I couldn't have thanked him more when that same compound delivered proof of concept in the clinic.
Wow.
In schizophrenia that I would have missed out on. Mm. But his being there and recognizing that if he just gave me a little space to maneuver over that time period where I needed it, that I would be able to come back and deliver. And, it worked out for me. It worked out for the organization, I think. And so it was a win-win. It just worked out really well when, I had the right opportunity at the right time and the right person leading the group who was willing to give me that opportunity.
You made yourself indispensable, it sounds like, early on throughout the entire time that you were working with him.
No, he was new. He was new. He had just arrived.
He knew what you came to the table with.
There was a reputation that I had, or there weren't that many compounds being put into development, and I was one that just did. So maybe, he saw that as someone he needed to hold on to a little longer.
I want to turn our attention now to some shout outs. I want to know if there's any role models in your history of your career or early life who have continued to inspire or influence you in your life and work.
So I really, it's going to sound a little cliche, but I'm going to give the shout out here to my mom, who is an absolutely incredible woman who has incredible leadership skills. So I told you, she just turned 86. She had 4 hip surgeries last year, and she just led the Boca Raton Jewish Film Festival, which was a 3-week festival. She read the screening committee and deciding all the movies that were going to be shown and making sure there were people attending them and hosting speakers at dinners. She did it all. And she's just incredible. And she's got incredible energy and leadership. And she's 86, so she probably doesn't like the fact that I said 86 a few times here. But she's really an incredible woman. And she's really, inspired in me that it was important for a woman to have a career and to be fulfilled in that career. So she really created that first step for me and how important it was for women to do it. So I'm super proud of her. And then I raised 3 incredible daughters who are now all in their 20s and are all building incredible careers for themselves. And I couldn't be prouder of all 3 of them. They are really people I need to shout out as well.
Wonderful. What a strong family bond it sounds like you have with inspiration for everyone at every level. This is wonderful.
I learn from my daughters now too, as they are coming up through their own leadership ranks and being involved in situations. I'm learning from them all the time. So it's really important.
I want to just wrap up here with a fun fact about you. Tell me any fun fact that you think our listeners would want to know about you.
So I love to travel. And we just came back from an incredible trip where we just went on a gorilla trek in Uganda. And so we literally got to, trek down to the gorillas and spend an hour literally within touching distance of the gorillas. They tell you to stay 5 feet apart. The gorillas don't pay much attention to that rule. And so, they were really up close and personal with this big silverback gorilla. And the pregnant mom and the baby, the child that was running around. It was amazing. And then going on safari and being up close and personal with so many of the different animals in Kenya was just incredible. So big fan of travel and looking forward to our next opportunity to travel.
Do you have it set up yet, or are you still in the planning stages?
My husband and I are going to Greece this summer.
Oh, wonderful. I've heard so many great things. We'll have to be in touch, and I'll have to hear all about your trip.
Looking forward to it.
Great. Well, that's a wrap for today's discussion. A big thank you to you, Dr. Rosenzweig Lipson, for sharing your insight with us today. So happy to have you and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Dr. Rosenzweig Lipson's story teaches us to embrace challenges, advocate for ourselves, and foster a collective spirit. By betting on ourselves and taking calculated risks, we can navigate obstacles and achieve success, knowing that we have the support of mentors and colleagues along the way. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Dr. Rosenzweig Lipson's insights and experience. Remember, no matter the odds, bet on yourself and keep on pushing forward.